My husband keeps bothering me about chores and work, and it's really getting on my nerves. Whenever I ask for something, he says mean things to me. I just wanted us to go through life together happily as a married couple. But if things stay like this, what's the point of being married? Just when I felt like there was no hope, my husband's behavior suddenly changed. I started to think maybe we could finally have the perfect married life I've always wanted. But I was wrong. I shouldn't have believed him. My name is Michelle Taylor, and I'm 43 years old. I met Edward a few years ago while he was on a business trip, and now we live together. We used to have a long-distance relationship where we had to fly to see each other because we were both so busy with work. But after dating for a few years, we finally got married. I'm going to make you happy for the rest of our lives, Edward said when he proposed to me. I never thought I could marry such a wonderful man. Back then, he was really friendly, and it seemed like a lot of women liked him. It might sound weird, but I felt really lucky that he chose me. Because of the distance, I moved to where he lived, and we started our life together as a married couple. But I couldn't just quit my job, so I found another company to work for. Why? Well, because Edward wasn't earning enough. Either his company didn't pay well, or he hadn't been promoted. I wasn't sure, but his salary was definitely too low. If I stopped working, we wouldn't have enough money to live on. At first, Edward wanted me to stay at home. But as we face reality, he stopped talking about it. Even now, years later, it's the same. We both worked hard to make ends meet. But then something happened that changed everything. It was because of Edward's actions. He was really nice when we first got married. But as time went on, he started showing his true colors. It started with little things. Like, he wouldn't clean up after eating. Hey, can you clear the table when you're done? Oh yeah, sorry. He'd do it when I asked, but then he'd forget again a few days later. Can you take care of the dishes? Oh yeah. We had talked about sharing household chores before we got married, but once we were married, Edward hardly did any chores. He always had an excuse. I thought maybe he was just tired, so I didn't bug him about it. But if I'm honest, Edward finished work earlier than me, and it seemed like he had it pretty easy. He even said his job was easy. Meanwhile, my job was demanding and kept me busy almost every day. Dealing with Edward and managing work along with household chores was really tough. Couldn't he pitch in a bit? I reached my limit and decided to talk seriously with Edward. Hey, about the chores, could you maybe help out a bit more? I'm really exhausted. Suddenly, Edward's expression changed. You could see right away that he was annoyed. I get it, he said, his voice full of anger. Although I didn't bring it up then, I couldn't help but wonder why he was so defensive. After that day, Edward's behavior changed a lot. I knew why. I had asked him to help with the chores. Thinking about it now, maybe Edward just sees me as a convenient maid. One day, after finishing work as usual, I came home to the smell of alcohol in the air. Holding back my disgust, I went to the living room. When I opened the door, I found Edward lying on the couch surrounded by empty beer cans. I figured he probably didn't go to work. Hey, what's going on? Are you alright? I asked, approaching my seemingly drunk husband. But Edward, opening his shut eyes, glared at me. Ah, so annoying, he grumbled. Annoying? His response was clearly disdainful, and he shut his eyes again. But seeing him so lost in alcohol, I started to worry. Did he have a breakdown without me noticing? Did he turn to alcohol to escape? Hey, what's with all the alcohol? I asked. Edward snapped. I told you it's none of your business. Before I could say more, he got up and started yelling at me, slurring his words. He threw insults and stormed off to his room. I was just trying to show concern. Why was I being treated like this? Alone in the living room, I cleaned up the beer cans and snack wrappers Edward left behind. Then one day, laundry and dishes were scattered around, some broken, including my favorites. Given what happened, I knew Edward did it on purpose. I wanted to confront him, but he wasn't home, though he should have been done with work. Maybe he was out drinking. He trashed the place and left. It's so mean. I called Edward, but he didn't answer. I texted, and he replied quickly. I'm not coming home tonight. No explanation. What should I do? Should I just go along with Edward's behavior? Is this my fault? It feels hopeless. I thought I did the right thing. What could I have done differently? Lost in thought, I cleaned up the mess. Later, I noticed a scratch on the floor, a reminder of this day. The next day, as he promised, Edward came back, smelling of alcohol and unsteady on his feet. What were you doing? I was really worried, I said, frustrated that he didn't even greet me. What I do is none of your business, he replied. We're married, so of course it's my business. His attitude made me even more annoyed. Pressing him further, Edward gave me an irritated look and went to his room without a word. Oh dear, a sigh escaped me involuntarily. Did I really marry someone with such a difficult personality? Where did I go wrong? Tears started flowing as I thought about it. But I wasn't giving up. If I'm patient and keep facing my husband, maybe one day he'll understand how I feel. He might spend weekends with me or even help with chores. I'm not asking for much. Right now, I just want him to be in a good mood. With that hope, I tried to talk to Edward. How was work today? Tough day. Dinner tonight is meat and potatoes. But he didn't respond well. Ignoring me became routine. He'd click his tongue and give annoyed looks. Fixing our marriage seemed impossible with Edward acting like this. Lately, he wouldn't even touch the meals I made. Eventually, I started to rethink our relationship. Should we stay married like this? Would it be better to leave him alone? The more I thought, the more negative I became. I made one last plea to Edward. Please don't ignore me when I talk to you. Surprisingly, he seemed to understand and apologize. I'm sorry. I was surprised. I never expected him to apologize. Then he said, I'll help with the housework from now on. Really? Yeah, I've been thoughtless until now, he said, gently patting my head. It felt like it had been years. It seemed suspicious, considering his past behavior. It's natural to be skeptical, but I wanted to believe Edward had changed for the better, and I let myself hope. Afterward, he truly started helping around the house. Laundry, cooking, cleaning, sometimes everything was done before I got home. I never knew Edward could cook. Sitting down in front of my beaming husband, we shared meals together. He also put more effort into his job. He used to avoid overtime, but now he mentioned studying for certifications and often stayed late. How's work going lately? I asked. It's going well, Edward replied with a smile. Our time together increased, feeling like the honeymoon phase again. But one thing bothered me. Despite claiming overtime, there was no extra pay. Since Edward never did overtime before, it was puzzling. Aren't you getting paid for overtime? I asked. He said, Oh, it's for independent study. I did request overtime pay. Oh, really? I'd like him to claim it for the extra money, but I'm not familiar with his company's policies. For now, I decided to trust Edward's decision. However, I would later regret fully accepting his changes. One day, my business trip was confirmed. I would be away from home for work. Before, my business trips were shorter, but this time it's for a whole week. Excitement, anxiety, and loneliness all grew within me. When I told Bob about the trip, his reaction surprised me. A business trip? How many days? Usually he's not very interested when I mention business trips and never asks how long I'll be away. But this time, he showed interest and even asked about the duration. It seems Bob is genuinely trying to prioritize our home life. With that thought, I felt grateful to have married him. I think it's going to be a week from the week after next. Oh, okay, the week after next then. Bob started checking his calendar on his smartphone. I'm not sure about the details, but he seems busier than before. I wondered if he's become busier at work or perhaps more relied upon. Got it. Be careful. Okay. Yeah, thanks. We had these conversations, and on the morning of the trip, I explained various household things to Bob. Thinking he had finally understood, I briefed him on the discount store, ironing techniques, and where to find daily necessities to make things easier for him. Well, I'm off now. Call me if anything comes up. All right, thank you. With that, I headed for my business trip. That evening, when I returned to my hotel after work, I received an unusual message from Bob. How's work going? It's going well. After some casual chit-chat, I sent him a goodnight message and set my phone aside. I couldn't help but wonder if everything was okay with Bob. Was he feeling lonely all by himself? With these thoughts, I continued preparing for work. About a week later, I finished my tasks and started heading home. Luckily, I finished a day earlier than planned. If no last-minute work comes up, I'll have tomorrow off. Feeling happy on my way back, I thought about cooking dinner and stopped by the supermarket. What should I cook? Curry, stew. Then I realized we might be out of oil, and it dawned on me that I hadn't informed Bob about my early return. Would he be surprised if I just showed up? I texted Bob to check if we had oil at home and to let him know that my business trip had ended early and I was on my way home. However, even after circling the supermarket, there was no reply from Bob. Was he still working? Doing overtime? Deciding not to disturb him further, I picked up a bottle of oil, thinking it's always good to have some extra. While heading home after shopping, Bob called. "Hey, are you coming home now? Where are you?" For some reason, he sounded panicked. Was something wrong? Yeah, I'm in the apartment elevator right now." Bob hung up without saying anything else. "What's happening?" Worried, I hurried to our apartment. "I'm home, Edward. Are you okay?" I called out, but there was no answer. Just as I was taking off my shoes and heading inside, my husband rushed out of the living room and collapsed in front of me. "Are you okay? It's hard to breathe. Call an ambulance," he said, grabbing my hand. I dialed 911 quickly. Within minutes, the ambulance arrived. I let the paramedics in, and they checked on my husband. "Will he be okay? What's going to happen?" While watching and worrying, I noticed something strange. There were a pair of women's shoes I didn't recognize. Obviously, they weren't the paramedics or mine. I felt a tightness in my chest. Glancing at the living room window, I saw a women's lingerie hanging there. Could it be? Is Edward having an affair? Looking back, he did seem very panicked when I called. Maybe he was trying to hide it. I cautiously scanned the house, pretending to prepare for my husband's hospital visit to avoid suspicion. Living room, restroom, kitchen, no sign of her. If her shoes are here, she must be around, unless she escaped through a window. Finally, in the bathroom, I see a light on and a silhouette. I open the door and look at the bathtub. I can't believe what's in front of me. I wish I had been mistaken about the shoes and the lingerie. I head back to the front door. The conversation with the paramedics goes like this. "You're his family, right? Please come with us." "I'm sorry, there's been a mistake." The paramedics sound shocked. Edward too lets out a surprised sound. Ignoring them, I bring the woman from the bathroom to the front door. "This woman is family, she'll come with us." Wait a minute, the woman gets flustered. Edward seems shocked too, and suddenly sits up with force. "You." The paramedics quickly try to calm down Edward, but he seems fine. "What do you think?" "Well, he doesn't seem to be in critical condition." In the end, it's decided that Edward doesn't need immediate medical attention, but if he feels unwell again, he should go to the hospital. The room falls silent after the paramedics leave. So, what's going on here? I sit both Edward and the woman down and demand an explanation. At first, they look uncomfortable and remain silent. But as I continue to stare silently, they seem to give in. Edward speaks up. "I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. She's a colleague from work. We're close, but there's nothing going on." Following Edward, the colleague chimes in. "That's right. We were just having a meeting here. There's nothing going on, I promise. Now, can you explain this? Do you need to take a bath for a meeting? Do you need to dry your underwear too?" I gesture to the underwear hanging in the living room. The two exchange uneasy glances, appearing troubled. I see through their facade. "If you have time to come up with a strange excuse, just tell me the truth." I press them. Edward looks up, his expression heavy with guilt, and finally spills everything. "I'm really sorry. I know sorry isn't enough." "So, you've been lying about working late?" It turns out Edward had developed a close relationship with his colleague Kate. After we got married, he started cheating because I kept nagging him about household chores. But when Kate praised men who do chores, Edward started working late to meet her. I noticed the smug look on Kate's face. That explains the lack of overtime pay and his supposed certifications. It was all a facade. "I understand what you're thinking. Let's just end it with a divorce," I declared. "Please go ahead and be with her." I was so fed up that divorce seemed like the only solution. It wasn't a threat. The deception I had endured had become unbearable. But Edward wouldn't hear of it. "Divorce? That's not the answer," he insisted. "If you had told me you were coming home, none of this would have happened." "Yeah, it's not fair to come home unannounced." They both chimed in. Had I been deceived by my husband's facade all this time? The realization left me feeling pathetic. "Ma'am, look, Edward really regrets it." Kate tried to calm me down. "You don't truly want a divorce, do you? You're just blaming me for his cheating," she accused. "Enough is enough. Let's get a divorce," I shouted, and they both recoiled. I hoped they would reflect on their actions and words. Afterward, I hired a lawyer and began preparing for divorce proceedings to claim my share of the assets. Edward kept calling, and even his parents reached out. They were understanding, and upon hearing my side, they apologized and agreed to support me in the divorce. Eventually, after likely talking to Edward, he appeared exhausted during the divorce proceedings and agreed to it without resistance. I reported Edward and Kate's affair to their company. Following the divorce, John and Kate, both employed at the same company, were quickly exposed for their affair. They faced ostracism from colleagues and seemed to lose their standing within the company. Additionally, they became the subject of gossip among talkative older women, and even clients began discussing it. Unable to endure the toxic environment, they resigned from their jobs. I'm uncertain if they married, but they likely faced financial strain. If they did marry, I can imagine them arguing over money. I promptly moved to a new, more comfortable and affordable apartment. Reflecting, I recall choosing the old place to accommodate John's preferences. As I returned home, I exhale a sigh of relief, grateful that chapter of my life has closed. Since the divorce, I've dedicated myself more to work, leading to significant improvements in my performance and a subsequent raise. While initially made in anger, the decision to divorce now brings me a sense of liberation. With this in mind, I enjoy my favorite tea, preparing for what tomorrow may bring.